Hello guys, Antoine here for Simarchitecture and welcome back to a new video. And also welcome to a new series called History of Architecture. And today we're doing the first episode of the series with a very well-known and popular style, which is the Queen Anne style. And I would like to tell you a bit more about this style in this video. So the Queen Anne style is actually only one example among others of Victorian architecture, which corresponds to the Victorian era, which was a very long period spreading from 1837 to 1901. And this is actually the reign of Queen Victoria of England. So we often talk about the Victorian style, but actually they're only not one style. There are several styles because it's a very long period, and most of the time when you think of Victorian architecture, you think actually of Queen Anne style, especially in the US. So, as I said, there were different styles in this time, including Renaissance Revival, Neo-Greek, Romanesque Revival, Second Empire, Scots Baronial, Italianate, Gothic Revival, and many others. All the styles were influenced we can find influences of these styles in all the colonies or former colonies of the UK, including Australia especially. There are a lot of impressive Victorian architecture building in Australia, but also of course in North America, especially in the US. So yes, the Queen Anne style is actually the common representation of the Victorian architecture. And when we think about the Queen Anne style, we actually mostly think about the North American Queen Anne style, which is actually different from the English Queen Anne style, because Queen Anne was a queen of England during the 16th century. So yeah, the architecture was really different at this time. So yes, let's say the reinterpretation of the style is actually very different from the original style, and it really emerged in the US. You probably already saw a lot of Queen Anne style in your life without even knowing it. When you think about big mansions in movies, big haunted mansions or very gloomy mansions, especially in these horror movies, they're actually Victorian and most of the time Queen Anne. So this is something that you already know. Yes, so as I said, the Queen Anne style is one of the many styles of the Victorian architecture. We can also call it the Queen Anne Revival, especially in Northern America. It emerged from around 1870, and the last houses or buildings in this style were built around 1910. In Australia, where it's very popular, it's mostly known as the Federation architecture and not as Queen Anne style, even though it has many similarities. It's almost the same. And yes, this is it about the history of the style, and now I will focus more on some key features that make this style very specific and recognizable, and I'm talking mostly for the North American Queen Anne style. So what is important to notice is that most of the time the facade is painted and asymmetrical, as you will see in this build that we're going to talk a bit more about in the next few minutes. There's no symmetry, just to create a very dramatic style, dramatic effect, and that's also why you can see a lot of towers in these houses or buildings. Most of the time there's a central tower in the middle of the house, just yeah, most of the time it's under the entrance hall. And also, which is something that you already noticed in real life or in this build, there are a lot of details everywhere on the exterior. So we have very detailed cables, woodworks, ornaments everywhere. You have to think that it actually emerged during the so-called Gilded Age, which was a very, very, let's say, yeah, very rich era in terms of architecture, because at this time, just after the Secession War, it was like the golden age of America, and there were a lot of very rich people who emerged in society, and actually all the greatest mansions that you can see in the US were built in this time, and many of them were lost. But we still have great examples of Gilded Age architecture, and Quinan style was a very, very popular style in this time. So a lot of very rich people had their house built in this style. So we talk about very detailed facade, but also something which is very recognizable for these houses, or the porch. Most of the time there's a porch that goes around the house on the ground floor, and you can also notice balconies, which are very usual, as well as wooden roofs. So these are actually, yes, the most common features that you can find in pretty much all the Quinan style mansions, but you have to think that there's a very large variety of Queen and houses in America. There are different variation, different style in the style, if I can say. I don't know if that makes sense, but you know, it's hard to describe it as one style. There are different interpretations of this style, and it's pretty much the same for all the styles, but it has some features that are common to all the different variations that make them recognizable. Yes. And now we are moving to the house itself that we're building today, which is considered in the US, I think, as the most brilliant, most beautiful example of Quinan architecture, which is the Carson Mansion. So the Carson Mansion is located in Eureka, so it's a town located in California in the US, and it is considered as the most grand Victorian home in America. That's what you can find on Wikipedia. So there's the quotes calling it the most grand Victorian home in America. It was ordered by William Carson, one of the first major lumber barons in California back in time. And it was actually a private house, and now it is a private club since the 50s, something like that. And it's located just in front of another very famous Victorian house, which is, I think, if I remember well, called the Pink Lady, which is also very, very famous. It's just like on the other side of the street. The house was built in 2 years, approximately, from 1884 to 1886. So it was, yes, at the beginning, or yes, rather in the middle of the Quinan style, if you remember that it ended in 1910. So the house is pretty large. It has a total surface of 1,510 square meters, which actually makes 16,000 something square feet. I'm not really used to to the imperial system. I only know the metric system, so excuse me if I say something wrong. I'm just not an expert in the imperial system. Anyway, so this house is really remarkable because it has all the key elements that we talked about previously. It can really be recognized as a Quinan style mansion. And the house, unlike many others, has always been maintained in a very good shape. And yes, back in time, those houses were very huge, but when the economical crisis came, most of these people just lost their wealth and they were unable to maintain their houses, and no one had enough money after that to buy them and just maintain them in a good shape. So that is why after the big crisis of 1929, a lot of these huge mansions were abandoned. In almost all the cities in the US, those houses were abandoned, and this is why actually these houses became like the symbol of haunted mansions, because yes, most of the people only saw them abandoned. So in popular culture, it's very usual to see these houses being haunted. Yes, I won't tell what movies, but I'm sure you have a movie in mind where there is a whole Victorian house being abandoned. Like almost every horror movie begins with an old Victorian house. So yes, in popular culture, these houses, and in particular the Carson Mansion, is really representative of the haunted Victorian mansion. You can see it on many book covers, paintings, posters. There's even a replica in some amusement parks, including the train station of Disneyland, which is actually inspired by the Carson Mansion. And yes, by the way, I don't know if you've ever been to Disneyland, but if you're into Queen Anne style or Victorian architecture in general, this is like heaven. Even though nothing is real, just recreated, but it's very interesting, and the architecture is really beautiful. So now I think I told you pretty much everything I had to tell you about a Queen Anne style. This is not a very, let's say, scientific description of the style. I just wanted to give you some key elements and keywords about this style, just so you understand a bit more what it is, because I don't know, maybe it's because I'm really interested in architecture and so on, but yes, before doing this video, I often read the term Queen Anne style, and I was not sure what it was. I knew that it was somehow like Victorian style, but I was not sure. So yes, doing the research for this video was very interesting, and yes, now I know that when I'm thinking about Victorian style, I'm actually thinking about the Queen Anne style. Yes, and this house, which is inspired by Carson Mansion, which has always not 100% accurate, but I think the front side of the house is pretty much the same as the real house in Eureka, California. And yes, it will be available on the gallery, of course. Beware, because it's a very big mansion. It's really expensive. I think it's around 700,000 simoleons. It has a lot of rooms, and it even has secret rooms, which I didn't show in the video. You will have to download the house to discover them. Yes, so now I think I told you pretty much everything. I just have a last request, let's say. So as I said, it was the first episode of my new series dedicated to the history of architecture. So we will focus on different styles, eras, or even specific architects. So if there's any styles or any architect, or yes, any era that you want me to talk about, please feel free to tell me in the comments what should be the next style that we explore in this series. I would be really glad to read your ideas and recommendation. And yes, I hope I will be able to present and tell a bit more about the style that you want me to talk about. So now it's time for me to leave you. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. And if you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!